Chapter 24 The Nation's Capital. In October 1789, before the change in the nation's capital had been decided, Washington made a tour of Long Island, visiting Flatbush, New Utrecht, Gravesend, and Jamaica. He breakfasted with Henry Onderdonk in what is now the town of Roslyn, and dined in Flushing, where he was interested in the fine gardens of its inhabitants. He returned to Manna-Hatin by way of Morrisania in Westchester County, where lived Gouverneur Morris and his family. At the time, Brooklyn Heights was being considered as a possible site for the federal capital, and while on this tour, Washington also viewed that district of orchards and fine old homes. Pierrepont's distillery stood then on Joralemon Street, and when his farm was later cut up into lots, he gave to the thoroughfares names of his old neighbors, like the Remsens. The town of Brooklyn was then little more than Fulton and Main Streets, with a row of stately elms leading from Orange to Clinton Street. New York was distinguished not only because national headquarters were established here, but also because many of its citizens had won high posts of responsibility in the new government. Gouverneur Morris, for example, was sent as envoy to France. Alexander Hamilton, as Secretary of the Treasury, was directing all his superhuman energies to the founding of a national bank, the funding of debts, and the establishment of a sound credit for our nation abroad. John Jay had been made the first Chief Justice, and Samuel Osgood the first Postmaster General under the new Constitution. Undoubtedly, the most serious problems before the earnest little group of legislators gathered in Federal Hall during those 10 experimental months were ones of finance and commercial relationships between states and with foreign nations. No men were so able to advise in these matters as the men bred in New York. In spite of the opposition of Jefferson and other strong anti-federalists, Hamilton's idea about national banking and finance finally prevailed. Back in 1780, officers of the Revolutionary Army had formed the Society of the Cincinnati. Later, another organization known as the Tammany Society, or Columbian Order, was started in New York by the Sons of St. Tammany, named for Tammany, a Delaware brave, with the intention of offsetting the aristocratic tendencies of the former. Its first recorded meeting was held in the tavern of Talmadge Hall in Cortlandt Street as early as May 1, 1767. This national institution, its founders announced when it was revived in 1789, holds up as its object the smile of charity, the chain of friendship, and the flame of liberty, and in general whatever may tend to perpetuate the love of freedom or the political advantage of this country. New York gained much from its 10 months' experience as the national as well as the state capital. More than ever before, and certainly in a more brilliant array, all races had journeyed up and down its streets. The formality and frequency of social affairs had stimulated a desire for culture, for languages, music, and all the arts. Directly out of this stimulation was eventually developed New York's wonderful school system. One other great agency of education, the New York newspaper, owes its present supremacy to the stimulation it received in those days when Federalists and Anti-Federalists needed plenty of ink, space, and all Noah Webster's listed words to express their contempt for each other. In 1789, 9 newspapers were hawked about the streets and read eagerly in the taverns and drawing rooms. Among these, Sam Loudon's Packet appeared 3 times weekly, the New York Journal on Thursday, the Daily Advertiser rivaled the Gazette each day, while the Gazette of the United States came out on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Noah Webster had established the first magazine, The American, in 1788, but its life had been a short one. The Minerva, his next and quite successful venture, became the ablest Federalist spokesman in the country. Among the gay winter customs that delighted the prosperous inhabitants of New York while it was still the federal capital were skating on the Collect, sleighing parties into the country, and brilliant cotillions where syllabub and floating island refreshed the dancers. One old Dutch habit pleased Washington best. The highly favored situation of New York will, in the process of years, attract numerous emigrants who will gradually change its ancient customs and manners, he observed. But whatever changes take place, never forget the cordial and cheerful observance of New Year's Day. At the Little Theater in John Street, he was 3 times a visitor while in New York as president. It was there, during a performance of Darby's Return, that he caused a minor sensation by laughing, the only occasion of its kind on record. His patronage and evident approval meant much to the actors at a time when many persons frowned upon the theater as ungodly. During the hot summer days of July and August 1790, Washington was host to the Creek Indians, who came to New York under their sachem, Colonel Alexander McGillivray. Decked out in their blankets and feathers to make a new peace treaty with Congress. The signing of that treaty was Washington's last act in the Wall Street Federal Hall. His full-length portrait had just been completed by Trumbull, and the Indians touched its cold surface with curiosity and astonishment. Their visit was the last exciting event of New York's life as a national capital. Stagecoaches and elegant private carriages began to carry away the personal trappings of government leaders, and Washington went slowly down the steps of Murray's Wharf, took his position again in the red-curtained barge which had borne him to the city in such triumph 10 months before, and turned to wave a reluctant farewell to its regretful townspeople. Mrs. Adams, the vice president's wife, wrote at length of their new home in Philadelphia, and of the arrangements for their convenience there. When all is done, she mourned, it will not be Broadway.